Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Primary Care Commissioning Committee meeting. I'm first of all going to invite Helen to give us details of any public questions that have been submitted to us. So over to you, Helen.
Hi, we haven't actually had any public questions submitted direct for the Primary Care Commissioning Committee. However, the CCG have received a high volume of questions, totaling over 50 for August and September, which are currently being reviewed and responses formulated. And these in due course will be published on the website, the questions and full responses. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Helen. So what I'd like to begin with is with introductions. And so what I'll do is I'll read off everybody's name from the attendance list that I've got. If when I get to the end you haven't been included, please just give me a shout. But if you can just say your name, what organisation you represent and what you do, that will be good. So I'll start off with myself. My name is Peter Riley. I'm one of the lay members, and one of my responsibilities is to chair this Primary Care Commissioning Committee. Joanne?
Hi, I'm Joanne Newton. I'm also a lay member with particular responsibility for finance and governance.
Thank you. Denise?
Morning, everybody. I'm Denise Dawson, and my remit, I'm a lay member on the governing body, and my remit is patient and public engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen Chapman. I'm the Corporate Affairs and Governance Manager for the CCG.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Evans. I'm the Chief Finance Officer at the CCG.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Crossley. I'm Head of Primary Care, Community and Neighbourhoods for HMR CCG.
Thank you. Alison?
Hello, I'm Alison Kelly. I'm the Chief Nurse for the CCG and the Associate Director of Quality and Safeguarding.
Thank you. Claire?
Hi, I'm Claire Richardson, Director of Strategic Commissioning for the CCG, and also have a dash role with the local authority.
Thank you. Nadia?
Good morning, I'm Nadia Baig, Assistant Director of Commissioning here at the CCG.
Thank you. Shabnam?
Hi, I'm Shabnam Sada, Quality and Safeguarding Manager at HMR CCG.
Thank you. Anthony?
Hi, I'm Anthony Threlfall. I'm Assistant Director of Public Health. I'm here on the behalf of Garma Thompson, who's the Director of Public Health.
Thank you. Ben?
Hi, I'm Ben Greenwood, Interim Chair of Health Watch Rochdale, representing Kate Jones today. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonal?
Hi, I'm Dr. Sharma, Sonal Sharma. I'm a GP and a clinical governing body member.
Thank you. Aggie?
Hi, I'm Aggie York. I'm a GP and I am the Primary Care Clinical Lead for HMR CCG.
Thank you. Imran?
Hi, Imran Ghafoor, GP and Clinical Lead for Mental Health, Quality and Safeguarding, HMR CCG.
Thank you. Pam?
Morning, I'm Pam Dickinson, Communications and Engagement Manager for CCG, and I'll be live tweeting from the meeting today.
Thank you. Councillor Ali?
Obviously, I'm a councillor, deputy leader, and responsible for Healthy Lives.
Thank you. And Stacey?
Hiya, Stacey Comer. I'm Admin Team Manager, and I'll be taking the minutes.
Thank you. So, have I missed anybody out from our governing body?
Kerry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm sorry, Kerry. Yes.
All right. My name is Kerry Porter. I'm part of the Primary Care Workforce Programme. I'm here representing Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership today.
Lovely. Sorry for missing you there, but thank you very much for introducing yourself. Okay, so I think that's all the introductions done. So could I ask for a list of our apologies for absence?
Yep, so we've got Steve Rumbelow, we've got Kate Jones, but obviously we've got Ben on her behalf, Kiama Thompson, but we've got Anthony Threlfall on her behalf, Damien Mercer sent apologies, and Keith Pearson.
That's lovely, thank you very much, Stacey. So move on to item 2, committee business. think there's just one item of committee business. When we reviewed the papers, we realised that in section 3 we have 2 papers, paper 3.5 about boundary reduction and paper 3.7 about the Core Plus contracts, and those are actually items for decisions. So what I'm proposing, if everybody is happy with that, that we actually move those 2 up into section 2 where we have the items for decisions, and discuss those in that part of the meeting, and then after that we'll move on to the other item 3 agendas. So is everybody happy if we do that?
Yep, move.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So item 3, declarations of interest. We do have a register of interest, but in specific meetings there are particular items that for which we require individual declarations. Sonal, yeah.
It's just the relevant bits around general practice, Core Plus, and the other one, the boundary reduction. As a GP, I think all my GP colleagues will be conflicted. So
yeah, that's fine. That's thank you. Yeah, and we'll make a note of that for all GP colleagues, as they often are with these primary care commissioning meetings. Will be conflicted on those items, so we can make a note of that. I think Ime has a particular declaration of interest as well. I don't know if you just want to do that for us, Ime.
Yes, I already emailed it in, but the application for boundary reduction is for my own practice where I work, so I'm conflicted with item 3.5 specifically.
Thank you very much. Any other specific declarations of interest? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. And as we always say, if anything crops up as we are making our discussions, then please just give us a shout and we will record that for you. Okay, yes.
Sorry, Chair. Could we just, for the purpose of the minutes, note how we're going to manage those conflicts of interest, please? So for 3.5, Dr. Kaffour would not be able to participate in any of the discussion. As this is a meeting that is being live streamed to public, he can stay on the meeting and would be viewed as being within the public gallery. And for 3.7, it will be all our GPs that are conflicted. So the same would apply for them, please.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that clarification, Helen. Fine, thank you. So we'll move on then to item 4 for the minutes of our last meeting held on Friday, the 11th of June. I'm not proposing on going through it page by page, but if anybody has any corrections or amendments to suggest, could you put your hand up now, please? Okay, I can't see anybody. Just shout out if I can't see you and you've anything you want to add. Okay. So we'll accept those then as a true and accurate record of the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you very much. Item 6 is Chair's, we have the item 5, which is matters arising and the action log. And let me just find that on my papers. Fine. So if we run through each of these, one by one. The first item, which is seen as ongoing, further discussions to take place regarding language line. So could someone give us some feedback on that, please?
Yeah, Peter, I can feedback. It's Shabnam.
Thank you.
So from the last meeting, myself, Sonal and Samina had met to discuss some of the issues around language line. Samina was due to present at this meeting. She had a presentation to kind of look at what some of the issues are and some of the work that she's doing around equality to address some of the issues raised, but unfortunately she's on sick leave at the moment, so I don't know if this could be deferred to a further meeting.
Yeah, fine. Yes, we'll leave that on the log then as an ongoing issue, and we'll take that up again at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The second
Yes.
item. Yeah, thank you.
In the meeting, there was quite a lot of reassurance, and I just wanted to reassure the public, given that it's a public meeting, that there's a significant amount of work being put in and consideration ever since Councillor Ali actually raised the query. So there have been measures put in place, and there's a lot of work going on in terms of ensuring the communication issues are managed.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. Denise?
Thank you, Peter. Sonal's actually just answered the question I was going to ask, just for reassurance that, you know, we're not missing any opportunities for people for communication, and that we're, you know, doing everything we can to assist that. So thank you, Sonal.
Yeah, thank you again, Sonal. Item 2, the COVID capacity expansion papers. Kerry, can you give us some feedback on that, please?
I'm just seeking some clarity from our finance colleagues within GM, Peter, so apologies. I'll try to get an update onto the board in between now and the next meeting.
Lovely, thank you. The next item is Core Plus, which we have a paper for decision today. I don't think there's anything I need to add at that point, is there, Sarah, at this stage for that? We'll deal with that later in the meeting.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was just a specific action to make sure we linked in with Anthony around indicators and some of the, there's no targets in Core Plus this year, but we have started those conversations with Anthony, so I think that action can be closed really. We just picked them up yesterday with Anthony around the primary care mandate, which Core Plus is part of, but it will become clear later in the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll close that item. Next one, primary care improvement programme. Sarah, can you?
Yeah, that action's been done. It was just to note, wasn't it? Because the original paper extended, the decision was extended beyond the life of the CCG. So we just put those amendments in at the time. So that's been done.
Yeah, thank you. The next item's closed. And then we have primary care workforce update, which I know you're going to give us later on anyway. Is that? Yeah. Leave that for then. Thank you. Primary care risk. Sarah? Oh.
Yeah, that was just a specific action to add on the risk around primary care estates. Now, it's not on the action log that's been circulated with the papers today, but it has gone on, and we've got a full review of the risk register at PCAT on the agenda for our subcommittee next week. So we've got a few more risks to discuss and add on there. So it will go on there, then it'll come back to this committee next time for full ratification. So you should be able to see it on there then.
Lovely, thank you. And then finally, and again, I think we're dealing with this later on the agenda, aren't we? The boundary reduction application.
Yeah, that'll be covered in the agenda item.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. So unless there's anybody any comments or questions about the actions, then we can move on to the next point, which is the chair's actions, of which there weren't any since the last meeting. So there's nothing to deal with there. So that takes us on to the second section of our meeting, items for decisions. And for the first item on there is the Primary Care Commissioning Committee Terms of Reference. Just as you probably have noticed reading through the papers, the only thing we've actually done is change the dates on that. There's actually been no substantive changes at all this time. So I just check with everyone that they're all happy. Everyone is happy with that. To accept those new terms of reference. Joanne?
I'm just checking with the command and control and the delegated functions and all those sorts of things. There's nothing that would change our role at the moment, is there?
Sarah, can you answer that for us?
Not that I'm aware of, and I could see Jonathan shaking his head as well. So I'm assuming, yeah, I don't think there's any direct impact, but we are in command and control to the end of the year, I believe now. So yeah, it's as we were.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions for Sarah on that paper? No, so we're happy to accept that then as our updated terms of reference. Yeah, okay, we'll note that. Thank you very much indeed. So at this point of the meeting, we'll do the rearrangement I discussed at the beginning because we have two more items for decision. So if we move now to item 3.5, the boundary reduction application, and as Helen kindly reminded me at the beginning, then we have one member, Imi, who's directly conflicted on this, and so he will virtually move into the public gallery at this point, but still obviously remain on the call. And I'll hand over to Sarah to talk us through the paper, please.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I know you've all had the papers, so I won't go into any detail, but I'll just do a quick summary, then we can move on to the discussion. So we've received an application as the committee from Peterloo to reduce the practice boundary. So we are, as a committee, required to consider the request, and as well as the information that's been submitted by the practice as part of its application, the primary care team also carries out a review. And that's looking at the following areas. So we do stakeholder engagement, we look at the surrounding practices capacity, we look at equability of access and patient choice to ensure that the proposal fits with our strategic fit, the impact of the proposal on the wider system and any financial implications. So the outcomes of the review and all the detail is detailed within the paper. So I don't propose to go through that in any detail. And it's just that the committee's asked to take all those factors into account when you're considering the application and whether we approve it or not. So I'll just bring the committee's attention briefly to what the key ask is and what the rationale is from the practice, and then we'll open it up for the discussion. So the main impact and the main driver for the practice acting at the moment is the impact on home visits and the travel time, and they're starting to feel the pressure of doing those home visits now that are a significant distance away from the practice. The proposal and the actual reduction of the boundary is to largely remove the areas from the practice boundary that are currently outside our CCG boundary, so the areas that fall under Oldham CCG. And also just before we move on to the discussion, just to make sure the committee notes that any change that we approve from the application will only impact new patients. So the practice is still required to maintain full services, including home visits, to those patients that might sit in those areas that we're proposing are out of boundary going forwards, but they still, if they're existing patients, they still will maintain full services for all those patients. So the impact will only be felt for any new patients in those areas choosing to register with Peterloo. So that would be the impact of the boundary reduction. So I think they were just the main points from myself. So I'm happy to open up for everybody's comments and discussion, but the ask is that we review the application and make a decision on whether or not we approve that reduction in their boundary.
Well, thank you for that, Sarah. Denise?
Thank you, Chair. Sarah, just to clarify that should any other practice be experiencing the same difficulties that Peterloo were highlighting, because there is planning for some considerable housing developments across the whole borough, we would be happy to accept their application in the same manner and consider it under the same conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, we would be able to do that. I think it's noted within the paper we have had some tentative queries from other practices that are looking to review their boundaries. So yeah, we would consider it in exactly the same manner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne?
Thank you for really very comprehensive. The top right-hand quadrant, which is in our boundary and not in the Oldham boundary, it does say that there's not a lot of population there and it's covered by other GP practices. I just confirming that you're saying the impact on those other GP practices is understood, accepted.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I breaking up?
A little bit, Joanne, but your picture's frozen. But yeah, no, I think I got most of that. It's just confirming.
Yeah, let me stop the video and then I'll just go on.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did hear the question, I think. So I'll try and answer it.
I've got into
missed anything, let me know.
I've taken the video.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, just to confirm, it's a very low populated residential area, is that top right-hand cohort. But as part of the stakeholder engagement, we engaged with every single practice across HMR and obviously picked up discussions with those that that would cover that area that it'd impact on, but there were no objections raised by any of the neighbouring practices. So I think that's presented in the paper. So we're not expecting that to have a huge impact on our neighbouring practices. Has that answered everything that you wanted to ask, Joanne?
Yes, I'll keep my video off if people are okay. It might help.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And anybody else, any comments or questions for Sarah before we move to a decision? I can't. Oh, Denise, is that a new hand?
Yes, it's sorry, Peter. Something just popped into my head. Sarah, when we've got a family that's already on the register for the practice, if there are any new births into that family, would they still be able to register at the same practice? It's going to be a bit difficult if mum can't have the children registered at the same practice as her, or father, obviously, as well.
Yeah, my understanding is yes, they would, because we try and keep families together wherever possible, and obviously the mother would be the primary carer then for those children. But I think, yeah, so my understanding is we would, or if that wasn't possible, we'd support them to moving together as a family unit to another practice. But I think under those circumstances, the practice would consider it, and it would make sense for that family to be in, and we would be supportive of that action.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you, Denise. Any other questions or comments? I can't see any hands. Just shout out if anybody, if I can't see you. Okay then, so we'll move then to accept that decision for the boundary reduction as described in the paper, and as a committee we will make a positive affirmative decision on that then. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So that moves us then with our rearranged agenda to item 3.7, the Core Plus contract. So I'll ask Sarah again just to run us through that, please, and then we can make a decision. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's yeah, it's just an update paper really, because the specification wasn't ready for us to bring to the last committee. But just to remind everybody that we did reintroduce Core Plus in the beginning of April as primary care went back to BAU with a reduced set of indicators and a light touch monitoring approach, though we have put the reporting measures in place to ensure that they can demonstrate progress, because as we mentioned previously, with being in the command and control, there's no specific targets, and the incentive and the balloon payment element from Core Plus has been removed for this year. So the paper's just updating the committee on the measuring and reporting measures of the work that's taken place with RHA since then to agree the exact measuring and reporting measures at practice level. Practices are actively working towards Core Plus now. And the main action for the committee is just to note and approve the specification, because we've added in the reporting milestones and the measures in the full specification now. So that for governance purposes, that just needs to be ratified by the committee. Just to note that the first set of reporting is due on the 11th of October, so we'll bring a full report back to the next committee about progress against those indicators and where we're up against Core Plus. And we are actively in the process of reviewing those indicators, because we did say as we moved into H2, which is the second half of the financial year for this year, that we'd continue as a system to review those indicators to make sure they were fit for purpose. So that work will be taking place this month. So it's just to ask the committee to approve and ratify the specification, given the amendments to Core Plus for 21-22. Thank you,
Sarah. Denise?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, Sarah, to clarify.
Yeah.
This came into operation in June. Sorry, I'm stuttering here. In June.
Yeah.
Okay, so this obviously has been fully discussed in your operational group committee, which I can't remember the acronym for. Just to clarify that.
PCAT, yeah, all the indicators came back to PCC last time as well, so they've come through PCAT and PCC as well, those indicators.
Okay, so what we need to do today is just to note that we are retrospectively agreeing it. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry, yeah, we didn't have the full spec because we hadn't agreed, because the contract is with the LCO. We hadn't finally agreed the dates and the milestones for the reporting. So the full spec didn't come last time, but the suite of indicators that had been agreed, and they've been circulated with the LCO exec previously and agreed through various committees and through the engagement with the LEG and the CPAP and the other forums as well. So yeah, that's all taken place, Denise. We are just ratifying the governance for the specification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne?
I'll leave the video and shout if I freeze again. I'm just getting a little confused with times, periods on this. So what we're approving today is just for H1, and we'll be looking at H2 separately. I'm looking at the appendix, which is 1 Core Plus, and that runs from April 21 to March 22. So I'm sort of getting a bit muddled up about my time periods. So that's the first question. And if it is only for H1, what are we anticipating for H2?
Good question, Joanne. Yeah, just to clarify, so the spec has been written retrospectively because Core Plus was, we'd agreed the indicators and practices have been working towards them since April. So it was just the governance bit around the specification to underpin the contracts. We can't actually enact any new contracts because while we're under command and control, so it was just so we could keep a track of that. We did say we'd review because we didn't know what the financial arrangements would be at the time when we agreed the indicators back previously. So we didn't know if we'd still be in command and control for H2, which is why we said we'd review everything. So we're not anticipating that there would be any major changes, but we will still do that review work this September. If there are any changes, we will bring it back for ratification for H2. But yeah, so there's if you in the detail of the specification, there's the caveats in the system that we will review it in September, and if there's any changes, they'll be amended to the specification. It was just about the financial flows because they would change if we came out of command and control. Does that make sense? Does that help? I've lost your sound, Joanne. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, Joanne.
Yeah, it is H1. We're not really expecting any major changes for H2, although that's going to be reviewed in which is where we're sat now. I mean, it is quite difficult for practices if there are major changes to respond when actually we're already in September if there are any new requirements.
Yeah,
but what
absolutely.
you're anticipating is that there won't be any of that.
No,
and
won't be any material changes.
I suppose, yeah. Are there any things that we would have wanted to have done that we've been has there been any significant impact of this on the plans that we would have wanted to do if we'd been in a normal world?
No, I think when we reinstated Core Plus, we agreed to a set of principles. So we've put a reduced set of indicators in because in reflection of the pressures that are facing primary care and that we're still operating within the pandemic. But the other principle was that we'd only include indicators that would support system recovery. So all our priorities have been in and they've been reflected in Core Plus. So I don't think we've missed anything that we would think is a priority, but we will do that piece of work in this month to make sure that nothing's shifted and changed. And if there was anything significant, we'd do the engagement with the practices and we'd bring that round. But like you say, there's a limited amount of time to have that impact towards the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for any members of the public watching, H1 is our speak for the first half of the year, which is April to September, and H2 means the second half of the year, which is sort of October to the end of March. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify that point, the guidance for H2 still hasn't been released, even though it's the 10th of September. So I think there's just a caveat that obviously if the guidance does impact on primary care, we'll bring that back through this committee. But at the moment, we don't have any guidance for H2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yes, we've only 20 days to go, haven't we, thereabouts? Okay, but we'll deal with that if and when that arises. Any other questions or comments on this paper? No, I can't see any other hands. So the recommendation is the committee are asked to note the contents of this paper and approve the updated service specification for Core Plus. So are we all in agreement with that? Take that as a yes. So yeah, we'll record that then. Thank you very much indeed again for that, Sarah. Okay, so I think that covers the 3 items for decision and takes us back then onto our normal agenda and into items 3 for discussions. So the first item we have on that is the finance update, and that's over to Jonathan to talk to us about that.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the first finance paper we've brought for this financial year to this particular committee. This is based on the month 4 position, which was reported last month. For primary care, there is an underspend of 239k. Predominantly that is due to an accrual that you'll be aware the GM team managed some of the co-commissioning finances on our behalf. They put an accrual at the end of the year and it's not come to fruition, so it's a non-recurrent benefit. So it benefits us for what we've been referring to as H1 during this meeting, but it won't be there for H2, so it's a one-off benefit into the position. Other than that, co-commissioning is pretty stable. So is the CCG primary care budget. It's only a change there of 17k. The one to highlight really is prescribing. At the time of this report, there was a slight overspend of 50k. We are monitoring prescribing very, very closely, and we've seen in month 5 a slight increase. So prescribing is on an upward trajectory. So we're doing some work with medicines management just to understand that. And obviously we'll report at further meetings, but prescribing is potentially an area of concern, just to highlight.
Thank
Welcome
you.
any questions.
Yeah, thank you, John. I mean, I understand that because more and more people are waiting for operations because of the backlog, that may be influencing some of the prescribing requirements. So can I just ask first, as far as H2 is concerned, at the moment, are we hoping to be at break even by the end of the financial year? Is that broadly our expectation?
So our expectation is to break even. What's not available at the moment, Peter, is the specific detail of H2. There are lots of rumblings about quite a significant efficiency factor in H2, which seems quite strange compared to the discussion that's been ongoing this week about increased investment in the NHS. But that is gathering pace, but until we actually see the guidance, obviously as an organisation we'll be aiming to break even, and once we have the guidance we'll do a specific finance model.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm sure you'll keep us posted on that. Any questions or comments on this paper for Jonathan? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed for that report, Jonathan. And we'll move on to item 3.2, and I'll invite Kerry Porter from the Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership just to give us an update, please.
Yep, no problem, Peter, thank you. So I think the main thing to bring to board today is the Integrated Care Service development. So Integrated Care Services Board for Greater Manchester is being progressed in line with the national developments and the implications for primary care services and their arrangements that follow. So it's been nationally determined that the infrastructure of the NHS across England is planned to change from April 22 with the establishment of the ICS boards for each STP area. Statutory organisations have been tasked with bringing together the priorities and to work collaboratively to continue to improve patients' experience in health and social care as that legislation happens. So the establishment of the ICS board means that CCGs will cease to exist from the 1st of April 22. Some responsibilities that currently sit with CCGs are expected to transfer to the ICS board. However, it's a challenge, and that's been worked through to consider how to continue to focus and deliver at a local level to respond to patient need. So although final guidance is still being developed, there is interim guidance available that's been published on the functions and the governance around the integrated care boards. And there is discussions and considerations by various stakeholders across Greater Manchester in regard to how that will work. So if board haven't had sight of that interim guidance, I can certainly share that. With regards to primary care, which does include dental, ophthalmology and community pharmacy, there is an expectation at a national level that integrated care boards will assume the responsibility which currently sits with CCGs. Again, there is an expectation that local work with practices and developing local responsiveness to services will continue. So really reflecting the strong relationships and work that's already been developed across HMR, for example, within primary care. There is the expectation, therefore, that operationally primary care across Greater Manchester would sustain locally based services within GM Integrated Care Board and taking overarching responsibility for these local services. There are current plans to see a locality board, which would focus on considerations of primary care commissioning committee, and I know we've touched upon that earlier on in the meeting. But it would also probably include dental, ophthalmology and pharmacy services. So where locality responsiveness is needed, it would really be discharged through the locality boards. But again, this is all work that's being drafted. There's also a national NHS human resources framework. I know that will be on people's agenda in terms of staff and pay arrangements. And that stated that majority of the workforce within NHS commissioning organisations at a band 8D and below would be lifted and shifted to continue with this work. And hopefully that's to retain stability and experience and corporate history from April 22 onwards. I think probably the only other thing to touch upon is that, you know, in reflecting upon that, there is a commitment for stability and there are no plans yet to change service delivery. So, for example, local enhanced services, you know, there is the appetite for that to continue. There is work around the financial flow considerations that are being progressed at a GM level. So I think probably this is something that maybe the board will be interested to continue to be updated on at each meeting. And that's it, I think.
Thank you, Kerry. That's very helpful. And for the public, I think it's worth mentioning that we will still, as the CCG, have a statutory responsibility right up until midnight on the 31st of March. So we'll very much be continuing on with our regular business until then. Joanne. Yeah, thank you, Joanne.
So I haven't read the interim guidance, so whether it's available to me or not, I'll hold my hand up, I haven't read it. So from what I was hearing you were saying, and accepting that until the final guidance is out, we can't be certain of it. I think what you were describing was still the arrangements and decision-making or delegated decision-making at locality level would be actually very similar. In fact, maybe enhanced, because we may be adding dentists, optometrists and pharmacists into that. Is that what you were saying? It's pretty well the same, or not? I've misunderstood.
So legislatively, CCGs will cease to exist, but it's how that locality and the GM overarching structure will function. So yes, it does seem at the moment that there will be a locality delivered decision-making process and a GM one that would work very closely together. So my understanding is your assumption is correct, but it is still work in progress, and I suppose that's the caveat that I would include.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I understand that we've got guidance. We can't assume anything, but it's really encouraging to see that the plans that GM are putting together would support that, which I think is the right way to move forward.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying, isn't it, that we do live in some ways in exciting times. There's an opportunity to build upon the additional cooperation and sort of collaboration between NHS bodies that we've seen during COVID, and that can be very much the silver lining that we take forward. And so we're hoping in the new locality arrangement that things will continue to develop and grow and improve our services for customers, for patients and the public. So that's very much our intention, to influence that in every way we can to achieve that. Claire?
Thank you, Peter. So just following on from that, governing body members will be aware of the work we've been doing in relation to the locality construct, which reflects the white paper, but also reflects the Greater Manchester model and builds on the work that we've done locally in Rochdale. So there will be, over the coming weeks and months, quite a lot of work to figure out what will be delegated where, what the arrangements will be, how the governance will work. but I think we can take some assurance that Rochdale already has a system in place which we are emerging into its future state. The other thing is there will be a paper again in part 1 for governing body next week, which references, or there's links in that to all of the guidance that's been released. So that'll be on its way out to inboxes today. And that will then be on our public website. So that gives links to all the guidance that we've seen. As Jonathan said, some of that guidance is expected and doesn't arrive, but as it arrives, we can share that.
Well, that's very, very helpful, Claire. And yes, I mean, we are in the direction of further integrating our health and social care services, as we've already started to do in Rochdale. And I think in many ways we're ahead of the game for other areas of GM, or some other areas from GM. And it's very much looking to build on the foundations we've already got to make things improve for the future. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Kerry on that? No? Okay then. So thank you very much indeed for your contribution. That was very helpful, Kerry. And so we'll move on to item 3.3 on the agenda, which is the primary care workforce update. And back to Sarah for that, please.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I'll just draw the committee's attention to a couple of headlines from the paper, because I think everybody's had the papers, so hopefully, and then I'll just, excuse me, open up for questions after that. So I think just the main points to note from the paper are the update around the ARIS scheme, which is, ARIS stands for Additional Roles Reimbursement Scheme. So through that, there's some funding provided to PCNs to recruit certain roles each year. So we've made really good progress this year in recruiting our mental health practitioners and our paramedics. So we've got 2 in post so far, and the recruitment is still ongoing around those paramedics. I think the main thing to note really for the committee in the headlines for the paper is, at the moment, although we've made significant progress with our recruitment, which was delayed considerably through the impact of the pandemic, we are currently forecasting that we'll only be able to draw down sort of 50% of that funding that is currently available. We are working closely with the PCNs now to revise those plans and to make sure we can try and draw down as much funding as is available to us by the end of the year to get those people into post. So we are reviewing all those recruitment plans with the PCNs as we speak now. So I think they were just the main points for me, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Joanne?
Sorry. Yeah, just looking at the recruitment, it's showing the forecasted to spend. It seems that Rochdale North has got a very significantly higher underspend than other.
Sorry, Joanne, you're breaking up a little bit now.
Other PCNs, and I just wondered if not having those posts. Take me off video again, sorry. I'm just looking at Rochdale North, the forecast underspend is proportionally higher than the other one. So I just wanted to get some more information on that. And I suppose the other question is, this is a national scheme, so we're being sort of told what to do. Would be the most useful. Did you get that?
Sorry, just missed the last bit, Joanne. Yeah, national scheme, I got to. It is a national scheme.
I'll switch. Yeah, I'll switch to my phone if this doesn't work. Okay. It's a national scheme. If we have the choice to recruit to additional posts that we felt were most needed, would these be the same? Answer the first question, I'll switch to my phone.
Okay, I will do. Yes. So yeah, Rochdale North are a bit of an outlier compared to the plans for the other networks. So we are working with them on that to understand why they have struggled to decide. Some of the stuff was around decision making around what was the most important roles that they wanted to put in place, and then we've struggled with getting recruitment in to some of the posts that are on. But we work very closely with Primary Care Academy and RHA around maximising the recruitment opportunities. So we are looking, working with other providers across the patch, like liaising really closely with the Acute Trust as well to try and maximise some of those opportunities to make sure we try and get people in post as soon as possible with that. So we are working with the North PCN to understand what some of those barriers might be and if we can put any try and progress that with them to put that into place going forwards. I think your second bit of the question, Joanne, was around national scheme and if there was more flexibility around the roles that they could recruit to, whether they'd have chosen different roles, or was that it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I think the ARIS scheme has definitely improved. I think in year one, it was very restrictive around the roles that you could employ. And I think the range of roles that are available to them this year have been very much welcomed by the PCNs. They were very much waiting. So I think the most popular roles are around clinical pharmacists, the paramedics, and the so like social prescribing link workers that were mandated, but they are still the most popular roles in determining that. I think one of the challenges we've got with the practices is the ARIS scheme, they're around developmental roles and it's about expanding that skill mix and bringing them in. So I think practices are more keen on those mental health practitioner roles and the paramedic roles. I don't think from conversations I've had, but welcome comments from the GPs themselves as well, might have a view on this, that there is another role that's now not available under the ARIS funding that they would particularly like to recruit to. I think there was some frustration that they weren't able to recruit to mental health practitioners, for example, in year one of the ARIS funding. They had to wait until it became available the next year, but that's the main one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and just on the Rochdale North, presumably we'll get an update at a later meeting on the recruitment there to make sure that they do get onto the right trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll bring another update report back to the next committee about how they've all progressed and how we've managed to improve those plans, hopefully to make sure we're a bit on track to spend more than 50% of that budget.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thanks, Peter. I think you've probably covered a lot of it between your and Joanne's conversation, but just to say it was really good that we've got the mental health and the ambulancing, because they've been so difficult to recruit to, so that's really positive. I just wondered if there was any other limiting factors, Sarah. I know COVID's been one of them, but realistically, again, with the NHS, we've got all this funding for every single borough in Manchester, and we're all trying to recruit to the same posts. So I just wonder how that's a limiting factor in trying to find these posts times 10 across GM.
Yeah, it is, and Kerry will well know that as well through the work that Kerry leads on as GM through the workforce. So that's where we've worked closely with Pennine Care, for example, to try and, because the other problem we have, which is related to that, is robbing Peter to pay Paul as well. So because you've got a limited pool of these professionals, so this is why we're trying to join up the recruitment to work with Pennine Care around recruiting those mental health practitioners, which has resulted in us being quite successful in recruiting some of those. I mean, the advert that went out for paramedics was a lot more than 2, but we're only successful in recruiting 2. So we are working around that, but that is one of the limiting factors, that we're all picking from a limited pool and everybody's obviously looking at the same types of roles. But that's where some of the links with Primary Care Academy are quite positive for us, because we have that developmental pathway and how we're trying to bring people in and train them up and like grow our own, if you like, in Rochdale as well, which should hopefully start to see some impact from some of that. And we have got really good links across the system around that through the relationship we've got with Primary Care Academy.
Thank you.
Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, just a quick one from me, Sarah, which in our preliminary discussions I mentioned, at the moment we're forecasting to spend 52%. But am I right in thinking that by the end of the financial year, we're expecting that to be much higher?
Yes, we are hoping, yeah. So we're working with them to revise those now and put some more updated recruitment plans in place. Yeah, so that is definitely our ambition, but there are limiting factors like Jonathan alluded to before.
The fact that resources are stretched already.
Yeah, and we're playing catch up because obviously had some delays throughout the pandemic as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Sarah? No? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. And we'll move on then to paper 3.4, the primary care risk. Back to you, Sarah, again.
Yeah, sorry guys, it's me again. Again, I won't take you through the it's quite a brief paper anyway, but the main purpose is just for the committee to note the 2 highest risks that we've currently got. So there's been no change to the, they were the highest risks reported at the last committee, but we still think they're valid and relevant and need to stay on at the level they are, which is around the risks around COVID and the primary care recovery. So it's just for noting the mitigations that we've got in and the work that's going on against them. I mean, the second risk around primary care funding alludes to the pressures that we were expecting in general practice, and I would say some of that's probably definitely come to light now. I know general practice is under an awful lot of pressure and seeing increased demand across the, but as the whole system is seeing increased demand from patients across the patch. So they were just the main bits to note, and happy to take any more questions. It will be going to PCAT for a full review and discussion, because there is an additional risk that we are looking to add on, which is around access to respiratory diagnostics, because that's limited at the moment due to the impact of the pandemic. But that will be go for full discussion at PCAT next week, and it will bring the full paper back again for an update at the next PCC committee.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on that paper? No? Okay, thank you very much. So item 3.5 we've already dealt with, so we'll move on to item 3.6, primary care recovery. And am I right in thinking that if our IT systems work for us, we'll actually have a little presentation there? Are we hoping to do that?
Yeah, Peter, I'm going to share the presentation, but I can't share, it's Nadia here, I can't share the presentation until host enables participant screen sharing. So,
I will allow it now, and Nadia, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sarah might want to start talking whilst
Yes, sorry, yeah, I'll do a brief introduction while the presentation goes. It's just a really brief presentation, so although the item is entitled primary care recovery, but we thought it would be useful. We agreed at the last committee we'd bring back the detail around the primary care mandate, because obviously one of the key work streams under that is the primary care recovery work stream.
Can you see that now, Sarah?
I can, thank you.
Right.
So yeah, if you could, I don't know, I can't do it like Chris Whitty does it, but move on to the next one.
You can try.
You could try, can't remember. So yeah, just to give you a quick whirlwind tour around the mandate. So we had to agree our vision. So our vision is the development of a sustainable and effective 24/7 primary care system that operates at the heart of a locality. So that was our shared vision around this. So we've engaged with the practices and the wider LCO system around the development of the mandate, but it's very much an evolving piece of work. So if we could move on to the next screen, Nadia, that would be great. So this tries to pictorially demonstrate where our sort of roles and responsibilities fit as a system. So the wider blue circle is our locality, and going forward, and as we are now, we're going to have a locality budget around that. So what the traffic light system was trying to demonstrate on this diagram is where our spheres of influence are, if you like. So the red circle right in the middle on the right hand side, that shows that's national funding that comes into primary care, which we get national direction on how we spend that. So as a local system, we can't influence and change that too much, but it's really important we're aware of all the work and the funding and everything and the outcomes of that work that happens in that red sphere. So under there, we've just got our core contracts, the national DES, the PCN funding and QOF funding. And then the amber circle that then goes around that describes the more, we have a set of standards that we get from NHS England and various GM initiatives where we have prescribed outcomes, but how we achieve some of those outcomes, we have locality discretion about how we spend some of that funding and how we get to delivering those outcomes and what works best for HMR as a locality. And then the green circle around that shows our discretionary funding that we have as a CCG, which is largely our incentive schemes and the local commission services that Kerry alluded to before when we were talking about the ICS development. And at the moment, that's all, we have all our LCSs bundled together in our Core Plus funding. So that is funding that we have more control over at a locality level that we can take through committees and determine what's best and what best fits for our patients. The remainder of the diagram just shows the interdependencies and how we work closely across the system with that. So there's the interdependencies with all the other mandates for urgent care, for mental health, children's and planned care, because there's lots of crossover, as you can imagine, between primary care and all those services, and how we would work together as a system. And the bottom bits are just our reporting lines and the other organisations that we have there. So going forwards, there'll be the Run Rochdale Health and Care LCO, and then the Rochdale Borough System Board. So that's just a pictorial representation of where we think we are and where we might be heading towards as well. So the next slide is a summary of our main work streams under the primary care mandate. So I'll just take us through this quite quickly. So we've got 5 main work streams. As you can imagine, the key one of that is primary care recovery. So under there, we're looking at things like our access, how we increase and improve and maintain our primary care digital offer. Around that, there's a lot of work going on around capacity and demand mapping and how we manage some of our appointment structures and things like that with all of our patients, and looking at, obviously we've rolled out the vaccination programme for COVID and how we continue to deliver that with flu. There are main work streams there, and obviously addressing health inequalities is part of that as well. The second work stream is around PCN development. So PCNs they've been in place now for about 18 months, and we continue to develop at pace. So we're looking at our governance arrangements, our network delivery plans, and how we integrate with our locality and neighbourhoods. Estates is a real factor for our PCNs, not so much about where we host some of our ARIS roles, but about our future vision and how we can join that together across the LCO. And as we start to work in greater partnership, that's a big work stream under there, as is engagement and research and development. So our next work stream is around system leadership. So this is wider than the PCN development. I mean, key piece around PCN development is our new clinical leaders that are starting to emerge, and our clinical directors from the PCNs. But as we transition into the new ICS as well, it's how we pick up that piece of work to ensure that we maintain some of the skills and expertise we've got within our system, and how we maximise our system leadership and our local clinical leaders as we move forward. And the next work stream we've pulled out there is the new models of care. So through that is about how we work towards transforming primary care. So this is where some of the projects that we've got ongoing here are looking at our enhanced primary care offer and the development of a locality hub delivery model. So there's some work going on around how we can start to address some of those issues and maybe start to do a test of change to start working in a different way, more on a PCN footprint where practices are working collaboratively together to deliver patients and to deliver services to patients. Primary prevention and self-care is a key work stream through that. And then we have obviously got the changes will be coming at the end of this year around how 7-day access is commissioned. Historically, that's been commissioned by the CCGs, but from April, that will be moving into the PCN. So we're working on how that may look from April next year. And underpinning it all, we can't do any of this work without our sustainable workforce. So workforce recruitment and retention, developing that wider skill mix and embedding our MDT approaches are our main focuses around how we will work together as a system to make sure HMR is a really recognised good place to work, and how we recruit and retain our workforce, because we can't do anything without our workforce. And I think the only thing to add on is the 2 key enablers to nearly all 5 of those work streams are really our estates and IT and the digital work streams that will help us through that. So this is our first attempt really at how we would put some outcome indicators around that. We did meet yesterday with Anthony, so we've agreed to we've started a train of work to get these a bit more sophisticated, and they will evolve as the mandate develops. So this was just a stab at some of the things we can get hold of relatively easily at the moment, and how we might start to look at and measure some of the impact that we hope some of those interventions and some of those projects that we've put through under the primary care mandate start to have an impact. But we've decided to look at them in 2 parts. So there's a set of indicators that will demonstrate how we're on track with all the project areas through normal project management stuff, and the other set of indicators is developing a set of indicators that will allow us to look at how primary care as a system is working, and that's what we're starting to do some work on from existing data resources, and then acknowledging where some of our challenges sit with primary care data and what we can do. But we'll be definitely working that through with engagement with our practices, because primary care, a lot of work goes on in primary care, and there's a lot of different ways of that is recorded, and how we bring together a suite of indicators that are reflective of the progress we've made is a work in progress. So we're carrying on for that. And then I think just move on to the final slide, which was a summary of the milestones we'd put in place, hopefully for achievement by the end of H1, so which is at the end of this month. So we're on track with some of those now. So we are refreshing the primary care strategy and implementation plan. The PCNs are working to put their delivery plans in place. The clinical leadership development programme we were hoping to be established. So there is conversations and some progress has been made on that to date. And it's linked in with the wider Hood neighbourhood strategy and some of the locality construct work that Claire obviously alluded to before is around. We're doing a piece of work reviewing our conflicts of interest and the governance routes as we transition into the new system. We have commenced our design and mobilisation plans for the extended hours and 7-day access model. So we're hoping that those plans will be able to be implemented as a test of change before the end of the year. And we are working towards our engagement plan. And we've already mentioned the review of Core Plus, which is taking place this month to make sure it's fit. The indicators remain fit for purpose as we move into H2 of this year. So I think that was just a bit of a whirlwind tour through the main areas and the main work streams that we've established so far under our primary care mandate piece of work. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Sarah. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you. Joanne?
Yeah, really quick through that. I was just trying to think about the outcome measures that you described and just trying to get my head around whether those are adequately covered all the things that we would want to do. Obviously, it is limited by data. Do you feel that by having those, you've covered all the areas you'd want to, or are there some areas that you would really like to manage or monitor in a way, but the data prevents that?
Yeah, I don't think that's a comprehensive list that we've put up there. So we have just started that work, working closely with Anthony as well, around how we, so I think what we agreed yesterday was we'll try and look at what good looks like, and then what can we get that demonstrates what good looks like, and then we might have to reduce that because there'll be some caveats with the limits of the data. So we might end up with this is the best kind of picture and this is what we can get at the moment. But yeah, that list is not representative of everything that we want to look at. So that work is still ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Sarah? No, right. Thank you, and thank you, Nadia, for assisting with that, and the technology worked flawlessly. So that was excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So I think that brings us to the end of section 3 of our agenda. So we'll just now move on to section 4, which is a subcommittee updates. I'll ask Jonathan to just very quickly talk us through item 4.1, and perhaps for everyone's benefit, you might remind us what I, M and T actually stand for, because I've forgotten, but I'm sure you remember, Jonathan. Are you on mute at the moment?
Yeah, sorry, Peter.
It's all right.
So information technology. So I think it's quite timely, and as you'll be aware, the paper's quite comprehensive with all the schemes that are going on with IMNT at the moment. So probably quite timely from that presentation we had, as IMNT is a key enabler. I'm not proposing to go through each one. You'll see that there's probably somewhere in the region of 15 schemes that IMNT is supporting at the moment. There's some really good work that the team are doing, and some of the changes that are afoot with GraphNet, etc., and EMIS. We are aware that IT is not always perfect, and we're aware of some of the issues and some of the outages that have happened recently, but we're working hard to get it sorted and a resolution. I would say the CCG IMNT team work really closely with primary care and do a lot of good work, and we obviously have a separate IMNT board. So as a key enabler, I think we've got the linkages there for the future going forward. But if there's anything specific on any of those items, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions or comments on that paper, which, as you say, is very comprehensive? No? Okay, thank you. So our final subcommittee update is for the Primary Care Assurance and Transformation Subcommittee. Damien's actually away today. Sarah might possibly be able to answer any questions, or if not, we can, if anybody has any questions or comments, we can simply pass them on to Damien for you and get you an answer in due course. Has anybody any comments on that paper?
Sorry, Peter, I was just going to say, happy to take any questions in Damien's absence.
Oh,
but
right, thank you, Jonathan.
I think quite a lot of the items have actually been covered on this agenda.
Yeah.
But happy to take any questions.
Yes, because quite often things go there first before they come here, don't they? So very often we've closed them off in our meeting anyway. So any questions or comments then for Jonathan? No? Okay, that's fine. So that concludes all our subcommittee updates. There's another report provided as well, which is just the ratified minutes from PCAT, which are at the end of the papers. I'm not aware that we have any other urgent business. If anybody has anything, could let me know now. But we've not been notified of anything. So on that basis, I want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you very much for participating in today's meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, the 10th of December. At the moment, it's scheduled as a Zoom meeting. I think there's a possibility that may change, but if it does, we'll keep everyone informed and put the information on the website if we are beginning to meet in public by then, because as an organisation, we are very slowly and carefully looking to sort of return to the office. And that might include public meetings, as I understand it, but at the moment, we're not very clear on that, and a lot will depend on how the COVID pandemic pans out over the next 3 months. But we'll keep everybody updated on that and let you know if there's any change to that. So thank you again. For those of you who are in the part 2 meeting, which follows this meeting, I'm going to suggest, if everybody's okay with it, that we actually start at 10 to 1 so that you can all finish a bit sooner. Yeah, thank you to Ben for attending there. And so if that's all right with you, we'll start for part 2 at 10 to 1, and I'll see some of you again then. So thank you again. Bye, look after yourselves.